and just start the recording. Great, awesome. I am just going to review some of the agreements that we can find on the slide. And what we're doing before we actually jump in the slides, I wanted to take the time to do image description. We really want to ensure that our space is an accessible space for everyone who is here with us. And we really appreciate the feedback that we get from you all after these sessions is so valuable. So quickly, an image description of myself. I am sitting down at my home office. I am a Latina woman in my early 30s, wearing a white blouse, glasses, and also some big earrings. Behind me, there is a blue wall, like I mentioned, in my home office. So as we go through the slides, we'll be in the practice of making sure that we are describing what we are sharing. Our community agreements include engage in active and respectful listening, choose curiosity. We've mentioned it a couple of times. When in doubt, turn to wonder. So rather than just go quickly, and resist that muscle memory of being in quick judgment, we always encourage to turn to wonder. We know it's a difficult practice, but we want to be principled in it. We're also reminding folks that we're all experts of our own experience, and we celebrate that you bring your story, your expertise in yourselves, and that is such a gift. I cannot tell you all enough how a gift that is. So we celebrate that, and we ask that you extend the same grace to others in the community. Additional agreements that we have tonight is participate in practice mutual respect. So always a good practice to some good intent, but also to allow people to shed light on their experience without feeling judgment. We challenge the idea and not the person. L as for liberatory language, like I mentioned in previous sessions, at CFC, we use intentional language that reflects and respects the goodness of God's creation. So all of the things that you're hearing us say, we have thought very thoroughly about. And if you have questions, or if you want to talk about some of the language that we're using, I invite you to reach out and we can have a conversation about it on a one-on-one level. And lastly, we always encourage folks to share the miracle and not the saint. We're here and we want this to feel like we want folks to feel confident participating and sharing their personal experience. But we also want to respect folks in terms of not sharing that without folks' consent and permission. So share the lesson. How is it? Share the miracle and not the saint. Are we good with these? These are the same that we've done in the previous. Can I see some enthusiastic nods? Amazing, great. It's not been necessary in the past, but just a word that these agreements are super important for us and my colleagues that are providing some virtual hospitality. If these community agreements are not being followed, we will follow up with you in the chat, and we'll remove folks that are disruptive. So with that, I just want us to take a deep breath and be in a prayerful moment. I am incredibly delighted to introduce you all to our newest CFC team member. Tina is our institutional giving manager and will lead us in prayer this evening. So Tina.
Hi friends, thank you so much for being here. I'm Tina. I use she, her pronouns. I am at my home desk. I'm wearing a green sweater, a brunette white woman. Behind me is a large screen and my living room, and I'm very grateful to be here with all of you today. You can take a moment to relax yourself in whatever way that works for you. And I'll lead us in a quick blessing. Loving God, you have called us into lives of collective transformation. You have conspired with us to create a justice-centered world. May your unyielding strength uphold us when we are tested and feeling weary. May your gentle warmth embrace us when we are in need of affirming care. May your righteous anger embolden us when we are faced with opposition. And may your grace be rooted within us as we are gathered here today. We ask you to bless us in our labor and our learning as we seek to be voices of advocacy and choice. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Tina, for that beautiful prayer. So folks, let's get into this. Our session number 3, we're going to be talking about lobbying and taking action. And for that, we have the CFC lobbying expert, our policy director, Shannon Russell, who is going to start us up with some information. Again, I encourage questions in the chat and folks to participate and be present in the way that feels good to you. Shannon, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Steph. And thanks everyone for being with us tonight. A special welcome to those of you who are joining us for your first Advocates Bible study session to hear about one of my favorite topics, which is taking action. So as Steph said, I am Shannon Russell. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Policy at Catholics for Choice. Quick image description of myself. I'm sitting down in my home, working from my dining room, like so many of us during the pandemic. Behind me, you might notice a degree and a black and white photo of a flower, as well as a plant, and some books. Some of my favorite books, I highly recommend Lady Justice by Dahlia Lithwick, and a mini bobblehead of the late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. So let's get to the heart of today's session, which is Lobbying 101. We all know that now more than ever, with the Supreme Court's outrageously callous decision to overturn Roe versus Wade and decimate the nationwide constitutional right to abortion, and the states continuing their efforts to strip people who can get pregnant of our moral and bodily autonomy, communicating with our legislators and their staff directly, which is also known as lobbying, is really crucial. This is an opportunity for you to tell your stories and share the values that inspire your advocacy for justice. And it helps to inform lawmakers about this positive and affirmative vision of the world that we want to build together, where all people have access to the healthcare we need, including abortion, and to effectively explain what we are for, and why we support the proactive policy solutions to achieve this goal. So according to the National Women's Law Center, deeply held positive values that drive opinion about abortion across race and political beliefs include freedom, health and well-being, rights, autonomy and agency, and justice, equity, and equality. Similarly, in the slides, we are illustrating CFC core values with a circular blue graphic that reads respect, justice, humility, compassion, trust, courage, audacity, and liberation. So before we had this session, we asked you to think about what comes to mind for you when you think about why you support reproductive freedom or why you would want to lobby your lawmakers for justice. So feel free to share those values in the chat so we can also bring them into this space. Because Catholics for Choice is a faith-based organization, we're articulating these values, respect, justice, compassion, from the perspective of our religious tradition and morals, right? So this is particularly important because we know all too well that our opposition is religious and has long claimed the supposed moral high ground on this issue, despite their abject failure to advance any policies that actually support the needs of families and people with the capacity for pregnancy. it's up to us to counter the misconceptions about people of faith, particularly Catholics, and what we believe and the values that we hold. Our lawmakers will only know that we support abortion access and why, in Catholics for Choice's case, because of our faith, not in spite of them, if we tell our lawmakers. Ultimately, regardless of how people identify and whoever you are, leading with your values allows you to connect with other people and with your elected officials at the most basic human level, to meet people where they are and to understand what motivates them, and perhaps even to find common ground. So by communicating with your lawmakers and their staff, you have the power to influence the way that they speak about and vote on the policies that impact your life and the lives of your neighbors and those in your community. So this is largely about building a relationship with your elected officials and letting them know what you, their constituent, believe. And anybody can do this. Anybody can meet with their elected officials and their staff, people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. You can meet with them on your own or with a group of your peers. You can meet with them in person here in Washington, D.C., or virtually like we're meeting right now. And also before this session, we asked you to consider why many people have never lobbied or met with their elected officials or their staff. So let's take a quick poll. Basically, the question is pretty simple. Have you yourself ever engaged in lobbying? And we'll get that up on the screen. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Let me share another poll. Here it goes. Have you ever engaged in lobbying? Okay, so I see people answering. We have about like half and half right now. And even before we were, getting ready for this webinar, we were talking about our lobbying experiences. So I will end the poll so you can take a look. And so we have about 46% of people that says you have met with your elected officials or their staff. No, but you have done it. You have interacted with your elected officials in other settings. And about 15% who say that you're excited to learn more about lobbying. So that's great. That's exactly what we're going to do right now. I think while advocacy and lobbying may seem daunting at first, it's important to remember that you are the expert of your own personal views and experiences, and that your opinion really matters. Elected officials would not be in office without their constituents like you. So let's start off by talking about how best to prepare for meetings to effectively advance policies as an advocate for justice. So for the purposes of this session, we're going to assume that you've secured a meeting with your legislator and gathered any additional advocates to join you. More information about this, including a sample meeting template request, can be found on pages 145 and 147 of your Advocates Bible. But today we'll focus on what to do before, during, and after your lobby visit. On the next slide, you'll see that we're showcasing a photo of 6 CFC activists and 1 staff member outside the office of former New Mexico Senator Tom Udall, as they were attending lobby visits during CFC's 2019 Activist Summit. If we can go to the next slide when you have a moment, Manuela. And there's the picture that I was describing. Thank you. So before your meeting, you should review bill language, talking points, and any other relevant materials just to make sure that you're prepared with the language you need to communicate your opinions. Throughout the remainder of our time together, we'll be referencing the Women's Health Protection Act, or WHIPA, to model faith and values-based messaging and to practice our lobbying skills. So Catholics for Choice has talking points on WHIPA, some of which are included in pages 155 to 156 of the Advocates Bible, and others that I'll share during our session. You can always feel free to reach out to Catholics for Choice for talking points on any bill that we've endorsed. Additionally, there's a coalition fact sheet available at actforwomen.org. So even if you don't have time to connect with me or Catholics for Choice staff, A quick Google search should help you identify useful resources about the legislation that you're lobbying on. You can also conduct background research, and this helps you to investigate what your lawmakers have done on this bill or this issue in the past. You can search lawmakers' press statements, websites, social media, and local news for information about their stance on reproductive freedom. Often it's just simply, again, Googling, if you have access to it, your lawmaker's name and the word abortion, and that'll help provide some useful information. Learning more about your lawmaker's personal or professional background helps you to frame the conversation. So if your lawmaker is a doctor, you can use talking points emphasizing abortion as safe and essential healthcare, because doctors know a lot about that. If they're a lawyer, you can talk about the constitutional right to abortion, and that it was long settled law until very recently, apparently. If they're a person of faith, you'll definitely want to talk to them about your religious or moral values and why you advocate for abortion access. Another step would be gathering your group and assigning meeting roles. So it's a good idea to designate somebody to handle introductions, to give background information, share any personal stories, make the ask, and to wrap up the meeting. You can do this in a quick meeting before your lobby visit, or you can even do it over email. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for a lobby visit, like preparing for anything else, is practicing. Practice greeting the legislator, introducing yourself, telling your story, and making the ask. Everybody prepares differently. Some like to draft an entire script, while others prefer bullet points or to simply practice aloud. Do what works best for you, and we'll also have time to practice together tonight. Just keep in mind that if you're lobbying virtually, you will also want to practice using the technology, especially if you're using a platform that you're not familiar with. Many of us have gotten used to Zoom, but you might be using WebEx or another platform. It never hurts to brush up in any case. As you prepare, remember, I'm going to say it again, you don't have to be an expert on anything except yourself. You're not meant to be visiting your lawmaker as a professional lobbyist. Congressional staff truly values meeting with their constituents because yours are the views and opinions that really matter to them. Your role is to represent your views and those of your community and to tell your story. So if you've never lobbied before, simply think of your visit as a conversation, because that's exactly what it is. Your members of Congress represent you, and their staff is there to listen to your concerns and to take them into account when deciding which bills their boss should or shouldn't support. On this slide, we've included an image of the US Capitol dome because in-person lobby visits in DC take place in congressional offices that surround the Capitol. So during your lobby visit, start like you would any conversation by greeting those with whom you're meeting, followed by introductions. It's good to include your name, why you're there, and your pronouns, and especially if you are representing Catholics for Choice. If you're joined by a larger group, I would suggest designating just a few people to speak and introduce themselves by saying, I'm joined by X number of advocates from your state or district. After introductions, talk about the issue that you came to address and outline the problem at hand. For instance, if you're going to go talk about the Women's Health Protection Act, you can say that we know that the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization only escalated a problem that was a crisis that was ongoing in this country. So since the court cemented the constitutional right to abortion in 1973, there have been so many abortion restrictions enacted in the states, 1,300 abortion restrictions, including 500 in the last decade and more than 100 in 2021. In the first 5 months of this year alone, an additional 541 restrictions were introduced. So this is just a little bit of you outlining the landscape of the problem that you're there to address. I would also say that here you can also expand on your description of the problem by leading with your values. Why does this matter to you? Perhaps because abortion bans and restrictions are inherently racist tools of suppression. We know that the aftermath of the Supreme Court's attack on our dearly held rights has impacted every single American, but the people most harmed are those who already endure racism and discrimination when accessing healthcare, particularly Black, Indigenous, and people of color, those who are working to make ends meet, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, immigrants, young people, those living in rural communities, and people with disabilities. So in this way, abortion restrictions are part of these intertwined systems of oppression that deny BIPOC access to civil and human rights, and they're inherently rooted in anti-Black racism, white supremacy, and other forms of discrimination. So our Catholic values demand that we dismantle these sinful structures of oppression so that people can freely choose how best to build and care for their families. On the other hand, restricting access to abortion is the opposite, and it's antithetical to the principles of equality, liberty, and justice that are central to our faith and that our nation was founded upon. This is the perfect opportunity for you to tell your story, answering the question, why do you care about this issue? Storytelling is a really elemental human experience that brings people together to build stronger, deeper, and more meaningful connections. Because we learn about the world around us through our observations and experiences, storytelling is also a great tool to share information with others. And stories are much more easily remembered than a litany of facts and figures. And they're incredibly useful in advocacy for that exact reason. You're creating a relationship between the storyteller and the listener, removing the topic from the realm of the hypothetical and putting a face to and personalizing the issue. Storytellers can invoke emotions, control the narrative around their experiences, and create their own terms for sharing about themselves. During your lobby visit, if you feel comfortable, you could share a personal story about abortion access, a reflection on how your faith or values influence your support for abortion, or something else. There's no need to get bogged down in statistics. You are the expert of your own story. So just as an example, if I was meeting with Senator Bob Casey, who's a Catholic from my home state of Pennsylvania, who has long been reluctant to support abortion access, I might say something like, I'm a fourth generation, born and raised Pennsylvania Catholic, and I'm part of the overwhelming majority of Catholics who advocate for reproductive freedom because of my faith, not in spite of it. My family actually immigrated to Pennsylvania seeking a better life, the freedom to practice our deeply held faith, the opportunity to achieve our employment and educational goals, and the liberty to determine our own destinies. So my work with Catholics for Choice is dedicated to ensuring that they and all of our neighbors can continue to thrive in our communities with dignity. And as fellow Catholics, we both believe in the values of compassion, humility, and respect, all of which compel us to fight for reproductive justice for everyone. Of course, you might want to frame the conversation differently depending upon what you know about your lawmaker from that background research that you did. If your lawmaker is generally supportive of abortion rights and access, this is a great chance for you to express your gratitude for their support and remind them of what's at stake in this moment. Don't let them remain idle while abortion access is under attack and more restricted than ever before. You can help build a deeper relationship with your elected officials by providing stories for them to share in speeches, asking them to vote for and co-sponsor new legislation, or inviting them to talk more about the issue on social media, in the news, or on the floor of the House or the Senate. If your legislator is hostile towards abortion rights, remind them that it's their job to listen to the views of all of their constituents, not just those who agree with them. We can't let anti-abortion lawmakers sit in an echo chamber of misinformation or claim that everybody in their state or district agrees with them simply because those are the only people they're hearing from. With that being said, it's obviously really important that you feel safe in your lobby visit and that you avoid getting into an argument because that stops all communication. Remember that the staffer's job is to listen to you. And at the end of the day, you're trying to build a relationship and get information, and that arguing will bring that all to a stop. Just try to remain calm and know that you're doing the right thing by being there and telling them how you feel. This is another great opportunity to use faith-based and values messaging. I always recommend starting by saying something like, I know we may disagree on this issue, but please let me explain how my faith guides my support for reproductive freedom and abortion access. Regardless of how your lawmaker or their staff feels, it's difficult for them to push back when you are speaking from the heart about your most deeply held values. Everyone's story is unique, and this is your time to share yours. Because our opposition is religious and has long controlled the narrative about people of faith and reproductive freedom, many lawmakers may disingenuously claim that they're representing the views of the faithful or protecting religious freedom when they're supporting abortion bans and restrictions. So you can also correct that misconception. You can let them know that the majority of people of faith support equal, fair, and comprehensive access to healthcare and respect for personal decision-making. In contrast, to deny anyone reproductive healthcare is to strip them of their inherent humanity and dignity, which is one of the core principles of Catholic social justice. Abortion access advances the common good. It allows people to make their own choices about their reproductive healthcare, to participate equally in society, and to thrive in their communities with dignity. Pregnant people are fully realized human beings and deserve safe healthcare services, as well as support and kindness from us, their fellow community members, not judgment and shame. As people of faith, we honor all individuals as moral agents, free to make their own personal decisions about their bodies, families, and futures according to their own consciences. Conscience is at the very core of our Catholic faith, as we learned in our first session. So that's an excellent point to bring up here. Catholics also really value the separation of church and state and cherish religious pluralism and diversity. And so we can explain this other core principle of pro-choice Catholicism, that giving people the space to follow their own consciences in what they believe and practice is especially important when making deeply personal reproductive healthcare decisions, because almost every religious tradition has their own unique view of when life begins. Our nation's founding principle of freedom of and from religion is so closely bound to our reproductive freedom. So our faith and our country's constitution demand that nobody impose a single religious viewpoint about when life begins or about the morality of abortion on everyone through the law. Just to note that while this is highly unlikely, if the legislator or their staffer becomes overly hostile or aggressive, you can end the meeting. This is about you feeling safe. If your legislator is unsure about whether or not they support the bill that you're talking about or abortion access in general, you can also talk about your shared values and how they are advanced by laws that support access to abortion. This is a really great chance to meet them where they are and to use what you learned during your preparation research. So talk to them about something that you know that they care a lot about. So perhaps your lawmaker is concerned, as we all are, about our nation's maternal mortality and morbidity crisis. Thank them for their support of legislation that would improve maternal health outcomes, and talk to them about the connections between this issue and abortion bans and restrictions. We know that states that most heavily restrict access to abortion care also lack substantial policies to support families. And research has found that states with higher numbers of abortion restrictions are the exact same states that have poorer maternal health outcomes. So following your detailed description of the problem and your own personal story, you'll make the ask, explain the solution, and inform the staff or your lawmaker of exactly what you want their boss to do. In our practice sessions today, we'll be talking about the Women's Health Protection Act. So as you have demonstrated throughout the lobby visit, the theoretical legal right to abortion has obviously never been enough. And so it's time for Congress to pass legislation that ensures that care is affordable and available to anyone who seeks it. The Women's Health Protection Act is that law. The bill would end medically unnecessary abortion bans and restrictions and provide people with the right to provide and receive abortion care. The House has passed WIPA twice, but the Senate has failed to do so. So use the lobby visits that we'll be talking about today to ask senators to support WIPA. And if they already do so, encourage them to take steps to increase support for the bill and improve chances of passage. Remember to ask questions and listen carefully for the answers. Hear what your lawmaker or their staff have to say about your ask and note any follow-up questions or materials that they need. It's easy to speak over another person when you're meeting virtually like we are now, so be aware of that. At the end of the meeting, say thank you and reiterate next steps. Remember to stay focused, practice good time management as you're likely to only have 20 to 30 minutes, and have fun. So now you've had your lobby visit. What happens now? On this slide, we're featuring a photo of 5 CFC activists and a staff member outside the office of New Jersey Senator Cory Booker during the 2019 Activist Summit. So within 24 to 48 hours of your meeting, like they had here, you should send the staff a follow-up email. This message should thank the legislator or their staff for their time and include any of the materials that you discussed or that they requested during the meeting. Advocacy is all about building relationships, so it's always a good idea to stay in touch with the people you met with. Strong relationships allow you to engage in deeper conversations, serve as a resource to the elected official, and help tip the scales of their opinion on pieces of legislation. So a few weeks later, check back in with the office. Did you promise to share any updated information? Did the staffer or the lawmaker commit to taking the action you requested, and did they do so? Can you thank them for following through? Checking in is part of this ongoing relationship building effort. And no matter how your lobby visit goes, feel proud of yourself because taking action is important. You matter, your stories matter, and your legislators needs to hear from you. So now I think we're going to transition to the fun part, which is practicing together.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, Shannon, so much for that super detailed kind of before and during and after the meeting. We are going to go ahead and spend some time practicing how to do that with several scenarios. And let me just ground myself here really quickly. Okay, so the best way to do this is to practice, right? That's how we sharpen our craft when it comes to lobbying. So today we're just gonna consider a couple of scenarios, knowing and acknowledging, right, that we all have different lawmakers and they have different backgrounds and we all have different stories. So we'll make space for all of that. We'll do our best. So each of our practice session will feature, like I mentioned, a unique scenario centered around a profile of an elected official who you plan to meet. And we try to make it familiar, but also challenging for us in order to gain their support for WIPA. First, Shannon and I will role play a visit with the elected official. And after Shannon and I do this, we're going to recreate a visit for you. And keep in mind, of course, that our recreation is going to be a lot shorter, although it's good to know time that sometimes like they're very pressed with time. So this is actually a great practice. We'll discuss a second lobby visit scenario together. And finally, we'll spend just a few minutes getting to know each other in small groups and discussing a third scenario if we have time for that. We'll see how we do, but we want to make sure that we have a couple of different opportunities. There is, oh, my camera was blocked. There we go. Can you all see me well? Great. Awesome. Fantastic. So let us start with scenario number 1. I just want to say a word about these role playing. Shannon and I will be modding a lobby visit with only 2 participants, right? And like Shannon mentioned, there are many other opportunities for people to take a role. So the community member in this one is I'm going to have to be the note taker, the timekeeper, and the storyteller. But we, of course, encourage you all to have bigger groups of people where different folks can play different roles, and of course ensure that people have the skills and support they needed to be in their roles comfortably, and that they feel like they have the skills to do what they're asked to do. So before we dive in, I just want to connect with this skill with others that we have learned in previous sessions. So during session number 1, we talk about recruitment, right, and base building. And to do lobby visit, like I just said, it's great to have more than one person. So this is one of the reasons, right? We want to build a base full of folks, right? Because we want to invite them to do these visits with us, and to feel familiar with the organization, and to feel like they are just ready to go and say they're part of Catholics for Choice. So definitely an example of why that recruitment work is important. And as Shannon mentioned to me yesterday, a lot of these skills for lobbying are similar to the skills for 101s too, because we're sharing our story, we're making an ask. So just wanted to call back those lessons that we have learned in previous sessions and bring them here, so it all can start fitting together. Okay, so enough about that. Let's get to the fun part, which is practicing. Tonight, I am meeting with Senator Shannon Russell. Shannon, are you ready to be Senator Shannon Russell? Great.
I am. I'm ready for my promotion.
Amazing. Great. So here we are, Senator Russell, a politician serving in the state of Virginia. Shannon was first elected in 2012 after working as a lawyer in a private practice for 10 years. Shannon is affiliated with the United Church of Christ, spoke at the Women's March in 2016, serves on the Senate's Select Committee on Intelligence, and has a good friendly relationship with colleagues who voted no on WIPA. But Shannon voted to pass WIPA both times the Senate voted. So we have a very, very particular situation here with Senator Russell. I am going to be playing the community member that meets with Shannon Russell. So lights, camera, and action, role playing for you all. Hi, Senator Russell, thank you so much for your time. My name is Steph Hansen Quintana, and my family and I are residents of Virginia, and we've been residents of the state for several generations. I'm also a pro-choice Catholic who is beyond concerned about the current state of access of reproductive care in this country. As I watch the news and meet with others like-minded people of faith, I just wanted to reach out to you to express my support for the Women's Health Protection Act and hear what you're doing to ensure it passes the next time the Senate votes. So thank you so much for meeting with me today, Senator.
Of course, Steph. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, you said you're Catholic. It's so important to talk about this from a faith-based perspective. I know I always try to, and I'll just flag, I only have a couple of minutes. I got to get down to the Senate floor for a vote. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Yes, absolutely. So quickly, to make sure that we honor your time, for me, like many people who can get pregnant, this is an issue remarkably close to my heart, Senator. Although I have supported people's rights to a full spectrum of reproductive care all my adult life, it became very personal to me a few months ago when I was pregnant with my baby. Becoming pregnant was a decision I made joyfully and with a lot of access to information and care. And even without great care and support, being pregnant was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And it was especially difficult, Senator, when a postpartum complication threatened my life. I followed a lot of the national conversation and debate over the issue of abortion, either from a hospital bed or during those first days with my baby navigating new motherhood and blood pressure medication. So the idea of forced pregnancy, Senator, that people were going to go through that experience without their consent was just, and still is, both infuriating and heartbreaking. So I want to be very clear, Senator, with Roe v. Wade overturned and abortion bans going into effect, people will suffer unnecessarily hardship, and it's just cruel. And it's, again, my values. Faith and justice are the building blocks of my family. And because of that, I cannot, in good faith, sit in mass and church every Sunday, know that many of my siblings in this country will experience forced birth and forced pregnancies that will impact their life, especially in many vulnerable communities. For me and my loved ones, it is important to live our faith in action, ensuring that we protect the rights, the health and the rights of our neighbors. So I'm here inspired by my faith and not in spite of it. And I know you're also a person of faith, Senator, so I appreciate your support for reproductive rights, but I want to see you doing more. So I just want to kind of invite you to think about what else you can do to make sure that this happens.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, my own faith really motivates me in this, and I think that many of my colleagues are there as well. And, it's really important that we hear from constituents like you. So what do you think would be helpful if I did?
Yeah, so I know, Senator, that you have a good relationship with some folks that have voted no. So I'm wondering, right, I'm so grateful for your yes, but I'm wondering what you can do to leverage your relationship with folks. Yeah, they can take a look at the Women's Health Protection Act and perhaps vote yes, and invite them to vote yes. Can you look into talking to your colleagues about that?
Yeah, I talk to my colleagues all the time. We're together all the time. So I think definitely, and because this is so important to you and it's so important to me, I think that it's definitely something that I could bring up in my conversations with them. Would you have any talking points that I could share specifically about the Catholic points that you mentioned? I think that might resonate with some of my colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely, that was going to be exactly my next question. How can I support you do that? So I can definitely send you some. I'm a member of this amazing organization called Catholics for Choice. They're great, and they have really amazing talking points about this. I can send them to your staff and to you and follow up regarding what else can I do to support you all, talk to folks from a faith perspective.
That's great. If you could send that to my staff, I think that would be perfect. And I really do gotta get to this vote. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And please expect an email from me following up. Thank you so much for your time.
And scene.
Okay. So we ran there for you all, but we just wanted to show, right, and try just to embody that and to illustrate and to exemplify. So I just want to take a moment to ask folks before we go into second practice, something that worked for you and something that you will do different. If you can share in the chat, something that really worked that you think went really well, and something that you thought was a missed opportunity, or maybe something that you will do different. We'll just give folks a minute. Oh yeah, talking points about freedom of religion. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's a good point about if you're meeting in person, having talking points that you're ready to hand to her or leave with her staff. That's really important.
Yeah, a link, right? I could have a link to, because we're meeting virtually. So I should have, rather than an follow-up email, which I still will do, having a link to the talking points would have been a really great idea. Awesome. So you can feel free to think about this, send us feedback, what worked, what do you think will be different, you will do different. And we will just jump into scenario number 2. Actually, love what folks are saying about the voting record, right? Because she definitely she did voted for it, right? And sometimes folks, when they're like, oh, I voted yes, they just like, whoop, whoop, I did my job, right? But I asked her to convince other folks. So wanting to make sure that we follow up and see the voting record to see if she was successful or not.
Yeah. And that's a great relationship building point, like we talked about, right? Like if you see that her colleagues actually do change her mind, or if maybe you want to follow up and see, you know, did they have this conversation? How did it go? So this is all good points to be able to follow up.
Yes, absolutely. So awesome. We are going to then take it to the next level and see how we do. Scenario number 2. Scenario number 2 is Senator Eldey is a politician serving as a senior senator from Iowa. Prior to being elected in 2015, she was senior accountant in a well-known firm in Des Moines. She supported the Inspire Women Act in 2017, a bill that encourages women and girls to pursue STEM careers. However, she also introduced legislation to defund Planned Parenthood. So Senator Eldey was the keynote speaker at the March for Life, Iowa, and she frequently tours fake clinics. So that is our second scenario for us. And because we have a group that is quite small and intimate, I think it's better if we just stay here and participate together. So I'm just gonna make that admin decision on behalf of all of us, so we can just stay here and participate together. So this is our profile for Senator number 2. Just take a moment to let that sit, right? Iowa voted to defund the Planned Parenthood, but also voted and like support folks in STEM careers as well. So that's the person that we are going to meet with. So some prompt questions for you all. How will you prepare for your lobby visit? And where will you focus on your research? How will you respond to this scenario in this situation? So just let's start with those 2. How will you prepare, and kind of what will be your strategy going into this meeting? I will love to hear from 1 or 2 people. I will also add the questions in the chat for you all. And folks can unmute themselves if they want to participate or participate in the chat.
Yeah, and you know, I can start us off a little bit, like how would you prepare for your lobby visit? You know, it's mentioned that Senator Eldey has a long history of opposing legislation that guarantees access to reproductive health care, but that she's a dedicated supporter of women's economic advancement. So you might want to take a look at the bills that she has introduced or co-sponsored and kind of relate those bills to the bill that you are trying to get her to support, WIPA, and talk about how really economic justice and reproductive justice go hand in hand. Yeah, talk about the economic impact of forced pregnancies on women in Iowa specifically. You know, I think it's a lot of times legislators will ask for specific polling data or information to their states or to their districts. So I think that if you have any of that available, usually that is something that you can find online. Yeah, talk about the Turnaway study. So I think that if you have research that you can cite, that is great. Again, you don't have to be an expert. So if you don't have all of the numbers and the facts and the figures with you, you can always say, like, I know that there is research out there on the economic impact of abortion bans and restrictions. I'll send you a link in my follow-up email. You know, you don't need to have all the stats right then and there, but following up with them, a great opportunity to continue building that relationship.
Absolutely. And I just want to highlight Lydia's comment in the chat about the economic impact, right? Which is exactly what you're saying, Shannon. Find that common ground. And this is when preparing for the visit is so important, right? Because we can like look at those. I also want to shamelessly plug the Advocates Bible, because it might not have very specific stats, but there it's a place of entry in terms of like doing research and like finding language and also frameworks, right? There's an entire page. I wish it's a little bit out of my reach right now, the Advocates Bible, but like there is a page with like different frameworks that you can use to prepare yourself for that conversation. Yes, saying thank you. Like Ashley mentioned in the chat, and just different strategies that I'm seeing here that are very, very important as well. Go
I
ahead,
think
Shannon.
also this is an opportunity to talk about how like the majority of people who get abortions are already parents themselves. And so, you know, talking about the economic impact of forced pregnancies, but then also what it means to be able to provide for the children who they currently have, or to plan their pregnancies in the future. And, you know, to be able to have healthy families in the future.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like that's another part where like stories can come into play too, right? Like I know everyone goes like, oh, I have a friend, but like I actually do have a friend who like recently got an abortion, and like she just got married a month ago, and like her and her husband like want to have children, but like she didn't want to have a baby.
Yeah.
She didn't want to have a baby a couple of months ago. She wants to have one like maybe 5 years down the line, you know? And I think I didn't see who was speaking. Like, I think talking about people who are already parents is super important. And that was a really important thing to bring up. And
Yes.
like, you know, there are people get abortions who like later want to be parents and like are excited to be parents, and like, and people get abortions and never want to have children. But like, you know, for Senator Eldey to say like, hey, like we want to make sure that like the children that people have are wanted, and like that the parent is ready for them.
Absolutely.
It sounds like
Yes.
this senator could use a little bit of information about reproductive justice and what that means and how it links to economic justice. And that, you know, the ability to choose whether and when to become a parent isn't just about abortion. This is about, you know, being able to parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. So it's about so much more than that.
Yes, I also want to appreciate, right, folks bringing that spectrum of like desires and like experiences with parenting. The story that I shared in the oh my God, how do you call that? Role playing that we just did was actually my story, right? Like I was on role play, but that was my story of how, right, I appreciate and like I usually go talking about these things as a person who saw a lot of these debates happening from a hospital bed or from those early days of parenting, which was like incredibly visceral and physical and embodied it to see and feel those. So I think like really connecting and just highlighting that, to me, it's actually very hard to share that, right? To like put myself in a situation where I'm sharing that story, but it's a great way of really thinking it, preparing so you can think it through it, decide what you're comfortable sharing and what you're not comfortable sharing, and then sharing vulnerably, right? So just want to highlight that it's not always easy to share our stories. As someone who does this work, and I'm inviting you all to do, I can testify that it is in fact very hard to share from ourselves and our experience. So if you're feeling that, I hear you, and totally see you. And folks wanting to take the conversation from the chat about Planned Parenthood, and I think folks have a really good point, right? Because Senator Aldi also tours FACE clinics. So this is an actual opportunity to take a little bit of your, what Shannon was mentioning. I might not think the same we might differ in this, but these are some of the this is some facts about Planned Parenthood, and these are some consequences about fake clinics, and tie it to your ask, right? Like make every word that you're talking count in service of what you're asking the senator to do as well. Wanna check on the chat, make sure that folks grade. I'm wondering if others have taking a temperature check about how folks feel. Will you meet with Senator LD? I'm curious to hear folks. With fake Senator LD doesn't exist, but it's based on a real person. So will you meet with Senator LD? Anna, you have your hand up.
I'll be there. I'll join you.
I can't hear you, Anna. I know that you just unmuted yourself, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Yes, we
absolutely,
can.
Yes.
We had a senator here, Skillicorn. He was against almost anything that would advance a woman. And I look at this scenario that you have up here, and I would try to remind people, one of the things that I struggled with the most, even now, I'm phone banking for a candidate. We're calling the people that did not support them. And part of me goes, it's such a waste of time. You're calling Republicans and you're trying to get this. But if we don't pursue legislators that disagree with our perspective, it's almost, to me, it's twofold. It's almost giving them a pass. This is okay. Your behavior's okay. And secondly, it feels like we have dropped the mantle that we need to pursue. I have a representative, Bill Foster. I'm a member of the National Organization of Women, and I went to one of his campaigns, meet and greets, and I asked him about the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, this needs to be published so that women have the same right, and the right to, again, based on religion, for it or to follow it. And while he's a Democrat, I was abysmally disappointed. He did not have the answers. And I said to him then, I will be at your next meet and greet, and I'm expecting you to be able to give me some answers. If we don't, it's hard to do. It's not my bailiwick to stand up in public forums and challenge somebody. I think how we challenge them respectfully. I think thanking them for the things that we do agree on that somebody put in here. I know that for when we're trying to fight an issue for now, you can regurgitate statistics that nobody cares about. But I think the point is to be able to say you are excluding LGBTQ community, you are excluding Indigenous peoples, you are excluding Asian American, Asian Pacific Islanders, you are excluding, and how can you say that you are acting on behalf of the people? But if we don't challenge them, if we don't go after those that are, I mean, I'm sure Bill Foster sees me in a meeting and he probably goes, crap, here she is. But he knows that if he sees me in that meeting, that I'm going to have a question. So at least he is doing more to get ready for me.
Yeah.
And I think as he looks at it, he has to be not so much better prepared, but he knows he's going to have to defend his decision the next time he sees me.
Yeah.
And he knows that I'm going to come with a crowd.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
And
great.
that's like a long-term relationship and a long-term thing that you've built there. And that is awesome. And again, it's like what I said about not letting people who we may disagree with sit in this echo chamber of misinformation. Like, congressional offices keep really detailed records of how many people meet with them about a certain issue and how they feel about it. So if they're only hearing from people who agree with them, they get to make lots of little check boxes, and then they say, well, I only hear from these people, and
Yes.
my constituents, overwhelmingly feel this way. So we need to counter that.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And as we kind of wrap up our time together, want to remind folks that this is just one strategy, right? Our lobbying is one strategy of many ways in which we are organizing and building power to win reproductive rights and fight reproductive justice, right? So if you're and the reason that I'm mentioning that is because recently in Texas, we presented in a conference, and one of the young folks that was there talked about their frustration and thinking that it was a waste of time to talk to their elected officials. And we had such a great conversation out of that honesty, right? Because again, we're not putting all of our this is not the totality of our efforts. We are going to come for our rights and for justice from many different perspectives. And this is just one that we wanted to invest and deepen in our leadership. So we're ready and feel supported while we're doing it. So I just want to say thank you all for all the insight, all the experience, all the different perspectives, all the good questions that you have brought into our time together, and just make it richer and just good. I'm very excited to lobby with you all very soon, which leads me to our invitation and follow-up action. Shannon, if you can just share with us.
Great. As Steph said, I'm so grateful that you all joined us to take the time to build our lobbying skills together. And now we can have the opportunity to translate those skills into action. So you probably know that January 2023 marks the beginning of the 118th Congress. A new Congress means new lawmakers, new legislation, and the reintroduction of priority bills like the Women's Health Protection Act, or WIPA, that we've been talking about tonight. So I'm really thrilled to join you to invite you to join Catholics for Choice for a virtual lobby day in January 2023, and we'll encourage our members of Congress to take proactive steps to advance abortion access and reproductive freedom throughout the 118th Congress. So we'll make this as easy as possible for you. We will schedule the meetings, we'll provide talking points, and we can even join lobby visits to help guide you along the way. So all you have to do is register at the link that we're going to put in the chat. And if you can't access the chat, you can always reach out to us at activists@Catholics for Choice, and we can share the link with you directly. We are really excited to lobby together. This is one of my favorite things to do. So feel free to share that link with other people of faith in your network who you think would want to be lobbying with us. And that's all the time that we have for today.
Yes. We are wrapping up session number 3. As a reminder, please make sure that you register for the lobby day if that's your thing. But I also want to remind you all that before the lobby day, we're hosting an event in December as well, December 8th. Just a plug for you all to come join our Advent Festival of 101s. It's going to be a space for us to deepen in our skills of having 101s. So if you've heard from me, you know that I'm just asking everyone to come. So I'm asking you all to also join us for that. It's going to be December 8th. You will be paired with someone from your same region. If there is someone, hopefully there is, we'll do our very best, and we'll practice our 101 skills that we learned last time. So December 8th, and then the January lobbying day. Add that to your calendars. And if you're interested in having a conversation with me, I'm also sharing my Calendly so you all can have a one-on-one with me in preparation for that December 8th event. So grateful for you all. And I will see you all here in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.